Hello, and welcome to another episode of Defining Your Brand podcast. Today on the podcast, I have Camille Dangerfield. Talking to Camille, I learned that she is actually a coach to other coaches, which in my book means she's the real deal. So I hope you enjoy this interview with Camille. So Camille, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so excited to have you on. For those of you who don't, or for those listening who don't know you, I'd love for you to kind of introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about what you do.
Sure. So my name is Camille Dangerfield. I am an online business coach, and I focus on helping coaches to develop their brands and build their audiences online and start, generating consistent income. So I mostly, work with women and all different types of coaches, from health to life to business coaches, financial coaches, some of them, and some who are aspiring coaches. Maybe they've been speaking and have written a book and are trying to figure out how to translate that into some sort of a coaching program. So that's kind of what I do, the short version.
So you're basically a coach for coaches?
Yeah, like the coach's coach.
That's awesome.
Because every coach needs a coach.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's funny. I always think about do counselors go get counseling? Everybody needs the thing that they're offering someone. So that's really awesome. I knew that you were a coach, but I didn't know it was for a coach for coaches.
A coach for coach. Yeah, so it's actually, I recently made a shift. Okay. At first, I was just kind of general, any woman who wanted to start an online business. That's who I was kind of trying to attract. And I realized as I was going that I really wanted to focus specifically. I realized I didn't want to coach a woman, for example, who wants to have an online boutique. Physical products aren't really my thing. If you're interested in e-com, that's not my thing. So I realized I really get excited about helping women develop their personal brands, get comfortable with live video, because that's so important if you're wanting to build a following online as a coach or a consultant, and helping them figure out how to build a tribe. So those are the things that get me excited. And I'm like, you know what? How about I just focus specifically on the people who need those things instead of in general online business, right?
Yeah. How'd you get it? What got you into that? What got you excited about that?
So it's funny because I realized that as coaches, a lot of times we might try to go around about and figure out the things we want to do, but what we tend to get brought back to is serving people who are a lot like ourselves, who are, going through what we went through at some point.
Yeah.
And so that's really the story here, right? I kind of took this roundabout path to getting to this point. Yeah. And I kind of feel like it just chose me. Even, awesome. Just getting into the coaching and speaking, if you would have asked me 3 years ago what I would be doing, I would have never been able to make this up.
Hey, those are the best stories, I feel like.
Yeah. So just a little bit of background about me. I had been an entrepreneur on a part-time basis for the past 15 years. I always had something going on the side of my day job. And so people, because they knew that I had tried so many different things, they would come to me when they were thinking about starting something. And so I had already been kind of coaching informally friends and family and friends of friends and family, right? But I still never really considered myself a coach. So when I decided to come home, I had my third daughter, and I told my husband, I need to figure out something that I can do to not have to go back to my job, because I was just over it at that point. And so I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew that if I wanted to build something online, I needed to start putting myself out there on video.
Yeah.
So I just started doing videos. And at first it was about a bunch of different things. I talked about natural parenting, and I talked about some financial stuff. And then I talked about, I did a motivational video, and people just went crazy for it. So I was like, okay, maybe I should kind of do this. Yeah. So I did motivational videos for a while. And I even opened up a coaching program and realized, you know what? I really want to work with women who specifically want to start a business, because just like the general motivation, and I felt like in the group, I was kind of trying to drag them along, but since we didn't have like a common goal, it was just kind of like improve your life, live intentionally. It was difficult to keep them like on a track, keep them engaged, because there wasn't something tangible attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started doing these virtual summits on a humbug. One thing about me is I just do stuff. So
I love that. I love people that just do things.
yeah. So I took this class about the purpose of the course was teaching you how to establish yourself as an authority online, right?
Yeah.
So one of the like bonus interviews on there was with this guy who had done these virtual summits and built his following and, you know, established himself online that way. And I'm like, well, that sounds pretty cool, because I had already been doing some interviews here and there.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I'm just going to do a summit. Didn't know how to do it. Couldn't afford to purchase the, you know, 5-figure course about how to do it. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to sign up for every summit I can find, see how they are formatting it, see what type of email sequences I get from them, and I'm going to just reverse engineer this.
Yeah.
So that's what I did, and I fell in love with it. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm going to keep doing these. Well, the second summit I did was about online income.
Okay.
And although it was posted in my mind, I thought I was doing this virtual summit series on a bunch of different topics. Once I did that one, I was like, oh my goodness, this is my lane. I need to stay here. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, on the back of that summit, I had women asking me to coach them. I had launched like a little boot camp on the back of it. And I'm like, this gets me way more excited. And I'm making more money with this than like general motivation, right?
Yeah.
So, because people who are motivated to make money understand they have to invest in that. And they're, you know, so that's kind of how I made that shift. And then as I got going a little bit more with that, I realized, okay, I need to make another shift to narrow it down and just focus on coaches. So I'm excited about it because although I'm not like this super seasoned coach, I'm enough steps ahead of the coaches that are just starting out to help them like shorten their learning curve on the stuff that the missteps I had, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think it makes me super relatable to them.
Yeah.
And as I continue to grow and mature, I can, you know, learn and implement more stuff that I can teach them as they're ready. So we're kind of going to grow together through this. But I think that's part of why the women connect to me so well, because I'm not coming from a place of like this untouchable guru that like has already made, you know, my 8 figures and now I'm just telling you to do some stuff that I don't even do anymore.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And I think it's so funny that you said, you know, I just know a little bit more, because I feel like that's any teacher. And I think that for the people, you know, speaking to the people that want to teach something, that's probably something that they need to hear. You don't have to be the most amazing or have been in it, you know, a certain amount of years. You just have to know more than the people that you're teaching so you can lead them in the process with you. And I think that what you're doing is amazing, that you can, you know, be kind of holding their hand along, you know, with in that process, because you're still experiencing it with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And so, I think that now is the time that people are looking for just like transparency and honesty. I think that's part of, you know, be honest about where you are. Like, I think so many people feel like if they're not showing like these fancy cars and like saying that they make 6 figures and all of these things on social media, that no one's going to want to listen to them. And it's not true. Yeah. And that was part of what was holding me back, because I had gotten a coach in this whole process. Part of what I kind of left out is that my first instinct when I was talking to my coach about wanting to go ahead and start a coaching program, I, from the very beginning, wanted to help moms who wanted to leave their 9-to-5s and start making money from home. But I felt like, well, who's going to listen to me? Because I'm really kind of still figuring some of this out. Even though I had a lot of business knowledge from like the things I had tried in the past, I hadn't really mastered this online thing yet.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, who's going to listen to me? And I got kind of nervous. And so that's how I ended up, part of the reason I ended up opening that other coaching program. And then after all of my roundabout trying to skirt my purpose, I
As we
ended
all
up
do.
right back here. Like, okay, Camille, are you ready to do it now?
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I'd love for you to talk about that. What is it like? Because we've all been there, to be kind of confronted with your true purpose and then kind of ignoring it for a while just to ultimately be faced with it again.
Yeah. So I believe that, and this is why I am so passionate about helping other new and aspiring coaches with this part of it. I think that we all suffer from, they call it imposter syndrome, right? Where you're like, I don't know, like, are people going to find out, my flaws, and am I really, good enough to help someone? And I can't remember who I was listening to, like maybe a month or so ago, and they were saying, if you're a coach and you're challenged with some of the things that you're teaching to your people, does that make you a fraud or does that make you a real person? Right. And I think it makes you a real person, right? I think, for one, it's helping you to understand exactly what your people are going through so you can serve them better. But I think what people miss is that going through the growing pains also establishes your authority. I just taught a class last week about, how to establish your authority instantly, even if you're a new coach. And I think that what we forget about, or what we discount, is all of the personal value that we bring to the table. We just think about the years of experience or the dollars in the bank, when there's so much more that goes into what makes you an authority, what makes you someone worth listening to. And part of that is, I've already been where you are, right? Yeah. So I think learning how to just own it, be honest about it. Like, you'll never see me trying to teach something that I don't know about. So good. If it's something that if I'm studying it now, I might, do a live and say, hey, these are some notes that I just got from this, so it's an honest thing. Like, I'm learning this, but I wanted to share this with you now, or I'll just wait and implement something, get a result, and then share that. So I think, it's just owning what you know, being honest about what you don't. And the cool thing about like summits and bringing in other experts for interviews is you can leverage the expertise of others to fill in the gaps where you don't have the expertise, and you get to learn right alongside your people. Yeah. Plus, you're still bringing the value to them. Right. And so it's still establishing your credibility and authority with them, even though the information is not coming straight from your mouth. So there are ways around, feeling like, well, I'm maybe not good enough to touch on this. You don't have to. You don't have to be the expert on everything.
Yeah. I think in a time like that we're in right now, everything's so accessible and everything's so out there that I think that people can kind of sniff out when someone is not being totally honest, or they're trying to put on a front that they know more than they do. And I think that it would be easy for those people not to be as successful, because we're just in a information overload. Everything's always at our fingertips that people can see when someone's not being true. So I feel like I would have much more respect, and I think a lot of other people too, just say, hey, I just heard this guy say this, and maybe they don't follow that person, so you're bringing information, like you said, to them that they didn't know about, and it may be someone else's information, but we all have access to it, so why not bring it to them that way?
Yeah. And that there's a lot of value in being the curator. Right? Like, because there is so much information, and people get overwhelmed, and they can get stuck in like this paralysis of, I'm studying all this stuff, I'm listening to all these different things, right, and so I'm not really taking any action and executing anything. If you can like corral the valuable info and say, okay, no, do this, then this, then this, listen to this, and then this, that's still valuable. Right?
Yeah, and because no one person is trying to do everything. Someone's trying to do what they're trying to do. So if you can attract that audience and say, okay, I've been looking at all the information in all these different areas that are overwhelming you, and I know that you have a life and a business and a family that you're trying to juggle in the middle of all of this. Let me bring this to you, that this information that you're looking for.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I mean, it's like, just do it. Like, to back to your original question, like, if there's someone listening who they want to do something, but they're nervous about, not being or having enough. Like, just start where you are with what's in your hand and with what's already in your head. And of course, you're always going to want to be working on improving that, like refining your skills, continuing to educate yourself. Like, I study all the time. That's actually probably one of my biggest challenges, is balancing the time that I spend on my personal development versus the content creation versus actually serving my people. But you can't, like, you have to build in that development time for yourself, because otherwise you can't continue to pour out into other people. It just won't work.
Right. So how do you, give us a little, I'd love for you to give us kind of behind the scenes on how do you operate? How do you, divide that time and give time to what is necessary, and kind of honor those different areas?
Yeah. So to be honest, like, sometimes it's a show back here. Like, people think that I have it all together because I show up consistently and, I give value, but I'm still finding my flow. Well, how long have I been doing this? So I opened my first program January of 2019. So I'm still like kind of in my first year of this myself. So it's been a lot of like figuring out my scheduling, and I have young kids at home too. So what it looks like right now is that I try to focus. Well, for one, I'm always listening to something in between time. So like, as I do a lot of my personal development while I'm cooking, cleaning, walking, whatever. So I listen to a lot of things. And what it ends up looking like sometimes is having my laptop on the counter in the kitchen. Like, I might be cooking or whatever, but I'm listening. And then if I hear something I want to take a note about, I'll just like dry my hands off, type something, and then go back to what I'm doing. So that's a little bit crazy. And I get that some people will be like, what? I couldn't possibly do that. But that's kind of how I fit it in. The schedule that I'm kind of testing out right now that's been working pretty well for me is I get up at 4. I do my morning routine, and 4-ish. The quarantine has thrown things way out of whack around here. Sure. But 4 is like that's like my sweet time that I can get up before anyone else is up and do my stuff. Like, I do my personal, routine, my meditation, my prayer, my, working out and things like that between 4 and 6. And then I try to get as much possible before like noon, like, and the kids wake up at different times with this quarantine. There's no school schedule. My husband's here. Nothing makes much sense, but I try to do like as much as I can before noon. And then that kind of frees me up to like start dinner and whatever else I'm doing, family stuff after that. And then I try to that's like my Monday through Friday, what I try to do. And then I try to use Saturday as like a creation day, and then like Sunday is like extra studying. So I do more like studying, planning Saturday, Sunday, more like posting on social media, connecting with people on social media, teaching my class in my group. I simplified things a little bit by just teaching one class a week in my groups. People know like, okay, I'm going to show up live this one day a week and teach. So I've just been, I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's kind of a little bit like what my schedule is like. Right. Sure. But I've tried all kinds of stuff. I tried doing like a couple of hours in the morning with the gap, and then a couple of hours in the evening. What's working best for me right now is to try to do as much as I can as early as I can. Like, to focus on the things that are going to move me forward before the day goes.
Right. Because sometimes you never know, like, you plan out a day and then it goes on and you're like, well, I guess we'll start over tomorrow. So yeah, I mean, I find that for me to be like, let's try to get as done, early on as possible, because you never know what the day is going to have for you. Today's sponsor is brought to you by Live Well, Love Well Apparel. Live Well, Love Well Apparel is a t-shirt company, but it's not just a t-shirt company. I mean, how many times have you bought a t-shirt and that you've loved, but it's actually not doing anything other than just being an extra t-shirt in your closet? How many of you have bought something to support a cause or support an organization, and you bought something, but it may be something that you never wear or never really cared about? Live Well, Love Well apparel is changing that. So how it's doing that is that it is designing t-shirts that you actually want to wear. This material is soft, it's got tri-blend material, it's comfortable, and it's just an amazing t-shirt and something that, like I said, you want to wear and want to pair with other things in your closet. And not only that, but it's a company that gives back. So this company right now is donating the proceeds to No Kid Hungry. No Kid Hungry is an organization that helps kids that may not have access to food for at home. So when they go to school, that they have a meal that's provided for them. Right now in this pandemic though, kids don't have that opportunity. They're not at school where school lunches are provided. So No Kid Hungry is making sure that these kids that normally have food provided for them still have a meal. So go check out Live Well, Love Well apparel by going to lwlwapparel.com.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, is your business set up that you talk to people online solely? Do you work one-on-one with people? How does that look?
Yeah, so I have one-on-one clients, and then I have a group.
Okay.
And what I've decided to focus on right now is really just building out my group more and focusing on filling up my group program. I enjoy it. It offers me a lot of flexibility with my schedule, like being that I do, have small kids at home, and I like the concept of not repeating the same things over and over again, having a place where you can log in and at your own pace go through the content, but then, still have access to me on a live Q&A a couple times a week.
Yeah.
So it's, I'm not having to show up at a certain time.
Yeah.
Except for those couple of pockets that I've designated as the times you can expect me to definitely show up.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So I want to talk a little bit, going through all of your Facebook and everything, I love your branding because that's, my area that I focus on, because I work with, people's brands and photographing that. So looking at all your imaging and all of that, I love it. It looks amazing.
Thank you.
So I want you to, how do you ever speak into that area for your clients about the way that their business kind of looks like as a whole?
Yeah. So for me, I kind of just started DIYing a lot of stuff in terms of the visuals that you see on my pages. Because I didn't have the budget to go and hire a designer. I did one branding shoot and I used those pictures in so many different ways.
Yep.
I just, made it stretch. I ended up, my best friend and I have started, whenever we're in the same city, because she moved on me. But we would, shoot each other and things like that. But I really do enjoy helping people to figure out what their feel is, because it's something that kind of just came naturally to me.
Okay.
I kind of just got on Canva and was like, this feels right. I like these colors. This is what I'm going to do here. And so I just create things. But I realized that's one of those things that I was taking for granted and not seeing much value in it. Because I'm like, I just need to get this done. And then other people are like, okay, how do you make your stuff look like that?
Right. Yeah. And I heard someone having a conversation recently, and it's, people take for granted when they know something or it comes naturally to them. And I think that that's where the coach comes in all of us, no matter what we're doing, is find those things that seem like, I just know this, and you'll find people that don't, it doesn't click for them, but they still want to know how to do that. So it's amazing that you found that and you're able to kind of pass that on to people.
Because even the color psychology and things like that, well, I know how stuff makes me feel, and I know what looks right to me, but there's actually things that you can teach people around that. So it is pretty cool to be able to teach something that just comes naturally to you, but in a way that people who don't get it naturally can grasp it.
Yeah, for sure. So talk about like, what is, how long have you been in kind of what you're doing now? You're newer to it, right? I know you've been kind of doing.
So I started doing videos like 2 years ago.
Okay.
And for a whole year, I was just kind of out there, not really, I didn't have a product. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just was like, I'm just going to keep on showing up and I'll figure it out. Right.
Yeah.
And so I did actually, I put a course out there, maybe like 6 months in, and like one person bought it.
Okay. Hey.
But it was because I had not, and I think that's what people do, right? We start showing up and we're like, okay, I'm just going to put this out here. I didn't launch it. There was no story leading up to it. I hadn't even made sure that the audience that I was speaking to was even the right audience for what I was doing. I was like, well, I've been talking about motivation, and I've had, anyone from like my parents' friends, church members, just random Facebook friends, people I went to high school with. Okay, so they're like liking and commenting on these motivational videos. So it's like these vanity measures where you're thinking, oh, well, I have an audience. Right. Not considering that these people have they don't necessarily want to be entrepreneurs. They don't care about starting a business. So like the first course that I put out there was it was called Launch, and it was a startup guide. Right. And it was like, there were some videos that went along with it, but it was telling you how to start your business. But there was such a disconnect between the conversation I had been having and then just throwing this product out there. Mm-hmm. And so, it was a flop. Right. So that was my first, I guess, official trying to make a business out of this thing that I was doing on Facebook. So the actual coaching program that I opened, that was last June. Okay. And it was in November when I realized I needed to make a shift. Oh. So I shut down that program, and the women were like, kind of like, what? And so and that's one thing about me too, like, it doesn't take me long once I realize, okay, this is not the right direction. Right. Let's correct this. Like, I think so many times people get married to their original idea, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it doesn't feel right, even if they chose it for the wrong reasons. Like, a lot of times we jump into businesses for the wrong reasons, whether it's network marketing, whether it's some sort of like idea. Like, I had started selling shoes during all of this time. I also started a shoe business. Okay. Why not? Well, okay, so going back a little bit to the long list of million things that I tried before I got to this point, I did used to own a fashion truck with my best friend. Cool. So I had done the fashion thing, and my niece and I were talking about an idea that she had one day. And long story short, we decided to launch this shoe business. And so I had all these shoes that I was trying to sell. And I realized as I got into it, this makes absolutely no sense. I don't want to be doing this. I was loading up shoes in my husband's car, like vending at events. It was cumbersome. You don't think about that sometimes when you just jump into things. Right. But it's like the amount of work, because I had done vending stuff before, right? But it was always smaller products that made sense to be toting around, not a whole inventory of all these shoe boxes. Right. So it was terrible. And it felt like a hustle. It felt like a terrible job that I did not want. And there was one day where I think my husband ended up getting called into work, and he couldn't help me set up. And so I had my youngest baby with me, and I'm like setting up for this event, and I spent all day at this event and barely broke even. And I got in the car and I was like, not right. I said, Camille, we're not doing this. No more hustling. You have to work smarter than this. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, but if I had just stopped before I, on a humbug, decided to start a shoe business and asked myself, is this even in alignment with the type of lifestyle that you're trying to create? Yeah. If I would have just pressed pause and thought about it, no. Right. It didn't make any sense, but I did that. So back to the coaching thing, I realized after that second summit I did that I needed to shift gears. So I shut down my coaching program like within a few weeks. And because that was the one that was kind of more general, right? I wasn't talking about business. It was just kind of, like life coaching.
Okay.
Which that's fine, but I realized that wasn't, although what I do now kind of intertwines the life and the business.
Yeah.
Because I'm grateful for that process because I did learn so much about mindset and personal development and, habits and things like that are important for business. I think a lot of times in business, we look just for the tactics and the business strategies and the stuff to do on the outside. But if you miss all the stuff on the inside, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Because if you can't, take control of the narrative in here and have the right perspective on things, you're not going to have what it takes to stick to it when it hits the fan. You're not going to be able to, look at an obstacle as an opportunity to grow and thrive. You're going to, shrink instead of walking in your full power. So I do teach mindset, and I do teach a lot of the things that I taught in that first group.
Yeah.
But then I also, get into the actual business stuff. So, yeah. And so
do you see a lot of your clients kind of go through that same process of thinking, I have to do this. This is what I started, and kind of trying to make that, square peg, round hole kind of scenario happen?
Yeah. So yes. I think it's a really common thing, right? I actually had someone tell me, and it was a business that she really wasn't making any money. There was no joy in it. It didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But she was like, well, I've put some money into this, and so I'm just going to make it work. And it's like, okay, like I can't change anyone's mind for them, but at a certain point, a sunk cost is a sunk cost. You can't get that money back.
Right.
But staying married to something that's not working,
it's not going to work.
It's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. But yeah, people do that.
Do you have when would you tell people to kind of make that call? Because we all wonder. I mean, I've gone through it before. I get started on an idea and I really want to do it and I really want it to see it happen. And at some point, you got to go. Even if it's not for now, at least you got to set it aside for now. And what do you have an idea when that is, or is that kind of internal?
So I think you have to ask yourself, and for me, it requires some spiritual grounding and the ability to just press pause on your ego and see what's really going on. Because I think there's a huge difference between quitting because you are not, dealing with the conversations here because, something gets tough, right? So you have to decide, am I quitting without really giving this a thorough effort? Have I even invested in any education to help me understand the fundamentals here? Have I, reached out to a consultant? Because sometimes I think we stop before we even get started because we don't even understand the foundational principles of whatever we're trying to tackle.
Right.
So you've got to read, you've got to study, you've got to, if you want to be able to say, I really gave this all that I had, right? It's, you don't want to be, have you read Think and Grow Rich? Do you know the story about stopping 3 feet from gold?
I don't think I've seen that one or heard that
one. So the Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, excellent book. You can listen to it for free on YouTube. I probably listened to it at least 20 times. But there's a story in that book where this guy goes out, this is during the gold rush. They struck gold. He goes back home and raises this money to get equipment to really go back and really get this gold, right? So they get out there, they're doing well, right? They send some money back, and then all of a sudden, the vein of gold or whatever it's called, like it dries up. They're having a problem finding the gold, and he feels like, well, I guess that's it. They tried, they kept digging, nothing. So they give up, pack up, sell the equipment to some guy, like not like a pawn shop, but something along those lines, like to some guy for a few $100s, okay? And go back home. Well, the guy that they sell the equipment to, he didn't know anything about gold mining, but he knew enough to go seek a consultant who did. Turns out where they had stopped drilling was literally 3 feet from the biggest reserve, or whatever you call it, right, of the gold. So this guy left millions upon millions on the table because he stopped 3 feet from gold without even thinking, let me go find an expert in this. So sometimes we have to really, ask ourselves, have I really tried this and it's just not for me? Or am I just quitting because I don't have, the tenacity to stick it through, or to at least, educate myself and consistently try? A lot of times we don't show up consistently for our dreams. Like, and it's a hard pill to swallow when you have to look in the mirror and be like, it's not that this doesn't work. It's that I'm not doing the work.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like the whole network marketing deal, right? Like, network marketing is just not for some people. And there are some people who do really well with it. And there are a lot of people who it could be for if they showed up and did the work. But because they don't do the work, they say, well, this doesn't work. No, it does work. You're not doing any work.
It's working for someone. Yeah.
So it's, I think sometimes we have to do a gut check, like, okay, am I showing up? And if I am showing up, have I sought out the proper counsel? And if I've done all of that, and this still just doesn't seem like it's for me, then maybe it is time to look at something, and sometimes even stopping to find out why we started that particular thing to begin with. Because sometimes, at least I know for me, I just had shiny object syndrome. And because I'm interested in a lot of things and I'm always coming up with ideas, I've had to learn how to corral that and say, okay, every idea that I come up with doesn't mean that's the right idea for me to pursue, right? Because I could be doing that all day, like stopping and starting and stopping and starting.
Sure.
So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think you got to come to that point too of, okay, we got to have the conversation, that internal conversation of, is this right? Or, and I think sometimes if you don't want to put in the work, then maybe it's not right. You may enjoy it, you may appreciate it, you may think it's great when other people do it, you may want to consume it, but it doesn't, if you don't love it enough to give some sort of effort for it, then maybe it's not the right thing for you.
Yeah. Or sometimes I think people will try to take something that should be a hobby and make it a business.
Yeah.
And you hear things like turn your passion into profit. Well, sometimes, but sometimes no.
Yeah.
I love to create, like I'm a artsy craftsy type lady. I like to make jewelry. I made jewelry and sold it for a while. And I realized I don't like making a bunch of jewelry when I have to make a bunch of jewelry. I like to make jewelry when I want to and not when I don't want to. That's not a good business model.
Right. Because if you got to pay the bills, you got to do the work.
And the price point on the jewelry that I was making didn't make sense. Sometimes, we don't think about the actual business side of things. Like, look at the profit margin. If you're making something, can you physically even make enough of these to make it make sense in terms of a full-time business?
Right.
And even if you can physically make enough of them, can you sell enough of them?
Yeah. Because you'd need help at some point, and then it's like, can you afford the help then,
Right.
Yeah,
so if you're going to make something where you're physically making them, it needs to be something not a $5 or $10 thing, right?
Yeah. So is there anything that like you would say is something that a conversation that you have pretty regularly with clients, or what do you see pop up that you think that maybe someone that's listening to this might could take away? Or an obstacle, or just anything like that?
A pretty common obstacle is just like a lack of confidence. I see that a lot. Just people being afraid to step out there. We created a whole separate program for even just like live video, people just being afraid to turn on their cameras. I partner with a couple of my other coaching friends, and we have a program called the Live Lounge now. And so it's just for people to come in, practice their live videos, get tips on how to make better videos and understanding how to market with your videos.
Yeah.
But simple things like that, like things that, we take for granted, just turn on the camera and do it. It's really hard for people to do that, depending on, what stories they have going on in their head. So I guess a lot of the conversations I have are just about how to really get your mindset shifted so you can show up the way you need to show up.
Yeah.
Because the bottom line is there's always going to be a reason not to do something.
Yeah. Did you ever experience that yourself?
Not wanting to turn on the camera?
Yeah.
Yes. So and it finally got to a point though for me where I was like, okay, Camille, either you're going to do it. So at first I was obsessing about like my background and my lighting, right? Then I got that figured out. And I mean, I had purchased this course. I'll purchase a course in a minute, okay?
Yeah.
So that was part of the problem too. I was like in information overload. But I purchased this course about how to do live videos. And so in the course, the people told you like how to create this background, but it was basically like showing you how to make a background just like the one that they did. So I ordered this stuff, and I found this blank wall in my basement that I was going to put this, it was like these textured tiles or something to create this kind of funky background. And then when I got it, I was like, why would I make a background that looks basically just like theirs?
Yeah.
Like I'm not them. And not that any of their followers might necessarily follow me, but what if they did? And they were like, why does her background look so much like that? Like, it just didn't even seem right.
Right.
So I was like, so I scrapped that. I returned that stuff. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to get a bookshelf from IKEA and I'm going to put some stuff on there, right? So then I figured out what light I wanted. So then I'm sitting down to do my videos and I'm like, my chin is crooked. Like it's not symmetrical. And so I'm like, thinking about that. And finally I was like, you know what, Camille, like either you're going to do these videos or you're not. Like your chin has been the same way since you got here. It's going to be the same way when you leave. Either you're going to sit here and do these videos or you're going to end up back at that cubicle. So like for me, it was just like, okay, screw all that. Like, what are you going to do?
Right.
And so I was able to just make myself do it just by realizing my fear of going back to where I had been was greater than my fear of people thinking something about my face.
Right.
So I think that, and that's part of the reason, to be completely honest, why some people will never do anything because they're too comfortable where they are and there's not much at stake, and their good is keeping them away from their great. Like until your desire for something different is greater than your fear of what people are going to say, greater than your fear of failure, greater than any of the rest of that stuff, you're never going to consistently show up.
Yep.
And so you either have to increase your desire or, get your back against the wall by some other circumstance. Like you always hear that story, right? Like the people with their backs against the wall, the people who are on their last whatever, they find it in them. And it's not that it wasn't always there, but it was that you were so comfortable before that it didn't really matter that much. Right. It was when everything hit the fan and when all the, chips were down or however you want to say it, then it's like, okay, I'm going to pull out what's already been in me all along and actually make something happen here.
For sure. That's so good. Yeah. And I think there's so many people that struggle with that, and that, like you said, and that makes me sad for people, because I've known personally people that, like, there's something that they really want, but they don't need it to survive. And so they will never achieve that thing or go after it because they don't have to. They have a job, they have a family, whatever it may be. And I know lots of people like that. They don't need the thing that they actually want, and then they never end up actually going for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, I lived in that place for quite a while. Like although I always knew that I couldn't see myself working in corporate America so long that I would actually retire from it, I was still a dabbler. I hadn't gone all in on anything until it was like, okay, third kid, not going back. And I actually put myself in a position where it was kind of like I burned my ship. Have you heard the story about, you got there are no ships. You got to win this fight or you're going to die. Like the ships, there are no more ships.
Right.
So that's kind of what I did. Like because I had 16 weeks maternity leave, took a 6-month leave of absence after that, like unpaid leave. But then it was like, either you have to go back or you have to resign. And so I just kind of quietly resigned. So my husband and I, we had talked about this, right? He knew I didn't intend to go back, but he also knew that I didn't have any serious traction with my business or anything. So I just kind of let the days go by, let the time transpire. And I was like, if he's not bringing it up, I'm not bringing it up. Yeah. So the decision point came, and I just quietly resigned. I went and turned in my stuff, and I'm like, okay, I got to figure this out. And to be honest, it got to a point where I was shifting stuff around, trying to figure out, because at that point, I was so afraid of him saying, you need to go back to work. But I was like, whatever I could do to buy me some more time to figure this out, that's what I'm going to do. So I made some irresponsible decisions. Thank God he's a trooper, and things are okay.
Yeah.
But for me, it was just like, it gave me so much anxiety thinking about going back to that and like living this lifestyle where I'm just going through the motions, because I had checked out mentally from my job so long ago. And I can remember a woman that I worked with when I first started working there. She was like a couple of years out from retirement, couldn't afford to retire right then, but she hated the job so much that literally on Sundays, her blood pressure would go up just thinking about going. And I'm like, man, she's like my walking worst nightmare. Like, I do not want to wake up 30 years from now and be in that position. Like,
yeah.
And so it took, some drastic decisions on my end, but I bought the time to figure it out, and, things are moving in the right direction now.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, where can people that are listening to this and watching this, where can they find you to kind of follow your journey and see what you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook, Camille Dangerfield. You can friend me, follow me. You can also go to CamilleDangerfield.com to get more info about what I do. If you are a new coach, or if you are thinking about becoming a coach, definitely reach out to me. I teach a free class every Tuesday. So yeah, that's how you can find me. The Facebook group is called Coaching with Confidence.
Nice. Are you on Instagram or mostly Facebook?
So Facebook is my home.
Okay.
I actually, my coach was getting on me about getting on Instagram. So I had gotten so overwhelmed, like in the stage where I was still figuring things out. I had gotten overwhelmed trying to be on Facebook and then Instagram. Then I was trying to start a YouTube channel. And finally I was like, I'm just going to do one.
Yeah. Hey, better to do one well than try to do all of them poorly, right?
There's enough women on Facebook. Like I don't have to be everywhere. So then I got so comfortable that I know I need to get on Instagram. So I'll be active on there soon. But for now, Facebook is where you can find me consistently showing up.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on here and sharing your story. And definitely hope that people that are out there, women that are wanting to be coaches, will come find you and have a conversation. That's what I did. I mean, I'm not a client of yours, but I saw what you're doing and it looked amazing. So I definitely wanted to
Thank
connect.
you.
So I just friended her and sent her a message. So I encourage everyone out there to do the same.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good one.
You too.